Okay, so today we're going to do the last few seifim of Siman Reish Aleph and Hilchos Mikvah. Next week, Mitzvah Hashem, we'll do Siman Reish Beis, which has more to do with things that are choitzes in Tevilas Kelim. So it also has to do with Tevila, but it has to do more with Kelim than it has to do with Chatzitzes. The last 10 seifim or so of Hilchos Mikvah deal with the potential for a mikveh not having the shear for a variety of reasons. When one is about to immerse in a mikveh, it may have been at one time kosher, but who's to say it still is? Unless there's somebody responsible, maintaining it. We're not even talking about cleanliness right now. We're talking about a kosher mikveh that just happens to be pretty close to being the minimal or exact size, instead of being generous, with the water. For whatever reason, they build an exact mikveh, and it sometimes could happen that it just diminishes for a variety of reasons, and there could be sfeikas, doubts. Now, doubts, we're somewhat familiar with it. When we learned Yore Deah, we know what a suffix deraisa is and what a suffix derabanan is, what a sfeika is, and how these situations tend to perhaps alleviate the problem. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. So here, we're going to be dealing a little bit with this kind of situation where there is a suffix. However, in the olden days, when it concerned taharas, it was a real big concern, and even today, it concerns a Niddah midaraisa. So, if she's tmeya to begin with, it could be an issue. Do we really want to be lenient? So, we have to consider the fact that certain aspects of mikvah is derabanan. One of those is the majority of the water is she'uvim. Not all of it. Some of it, most of it, but not all of it, because we had a machlekes, what the status would be of maim she'uvin lechatchila. And now we know that there's a lechatchila, there's a b'diavad in many, many situations. And that's what needs to be considered some of the time. And we're going to see various examples of where we're lenient, and sometimes we're not lenient for various reasons. So these are not too difficult. I think we can go through them pretty quickly. Sif Saman Hey says as follows. Samach Hey. Mikveh shehu muchzak liyos meim of mitmatim. So let's say you do have a mikveh that has a record. It's muchzak. It is known that with time, meim of mitmatim, the waters decrease. Velamot al pochos memem so, and they decreased that they could become less than 40 so. Vetov laboy, in parentheses, she immersed in such a mikveh. Tzricho lachzo velitboil, she has to go back and immerse. Kol zman, as long as shelo yadanu bevadai, as long as we don't know with certainty, shebesha'a shetavla, that at the time that she immersed, hayabo mem se'ah, there was 40 so. Aval im lo huchzak liyot mimavit matim kol kach, if the waters go down, but they don't go down so much, sheyamdu al pachot me-40 se'ah, that they would easily come down below 40 se'ah. Af al pi shepa'amim, it could happen that sometimes shemeimav olim upa'amim mitmatim, and sometimes they decrease. In other words, it does vary, we know that, but we don't know for sure that it goes down that much, or it goes down that often. Then in that kind of a case, she immersed without checking, Einat tzricha lachzor, we don't make her go back to litvoil. In other words, according to the halacha, you don't have to. Obviously, if we figure things out immediately, something is wrong, she's still there, we're going to tell you, what, wait. If there's a problem, let's see if we can fix it. Let's see if we can redo it if it was not done properly the first time. But here, otherwise, we're not going to be choisha. She doesn't have to go back to be toivo. Mikol mokom. Kosher dover, the right thing to do, the mechaber says, is le'ayin koydem tefillah. If there's any doubt whatsoever, many mikvahs there's no doubt. We see that it's a large mikveh. But if there's any doubt whatsoever, it's the right thing to do is to le'ayin, to examine the mikveh koydem tefillah, im yesh boim arboim so, to see if there's 40 so. So here, what is the situation talking about? Here we're talking about that it does happen that this particular mikveh or some mikvahs lose water somehow. And Preferably, it should have been that she should have checked it, or somebody should have checked the mikveh before any tevilah was done. It just turns out to be that somebody did go ahead and examine the mikveh after the fact. And after the fact, they found it's okay. It's all right. This 40 se'ah. So the Taz explains that also hatvilah. In that case, even though the waters do decrease, and they should have been checked before, but now, at the very least, right after the tefillah, you went ahead and examined, you went ahead and checked, and it does contain 40 se'ah, then it's okay. It's kosher. So that's what Seif Samachay is all about. That lechatchila, obviously, in this kind of mikvois where there can be a suffix, check it out so you don't run into problems after the fact. Next seif is a situation which we've had in the past, somewhat, where it could be difficult for a man or a woman to immerse in the mikveh because it is not a deep mikveh. It does contain the required amount, but because of its dimensions, the waters are spread out, so that when she goes down, it just barely reaches her stomach, let's say. And obviously, she has to cover her entire body with water. So Mechaber says like this: Mikveh shemeimav mispashtin. Let's say the waters spread out. Ve'eino yochol iskasos boy. He cannot or she cannot cover themselves completely. One way to do it is just flat down. Go down completely flat. In that, if there's no other choice, you can do that. But here we have a little bit of an ingenious idea of how to make it easy. How do you get the waters to reach the top of your head without having to bend down? What you can do is noisen boy mitzad echod. You're allowed to put on the one side of the mikveh. It's a big mikveh. You can put avonim or chavile eitzim. You can put stones. You can fill it up with some bundles of wood, and that will allow so the waters should gather into one area, and they will come up a little bit in such a way or so much that she will or he will be able to cover themselves easily. You can do that. You can artificially somehow raise one area of the mikveh, as long as...
Why would you think not?
We're going to see. There's two potential problems. Bilvad shelo yechalku kol mikveh. As long as you don't split the mikveh into two, you have the potential when you put stuff in to divide up the mikveh, and you don't have 40 se'ah in the area where she is immersing, if you divided up the mikveh. So as long as you're not dividing up the mikveh, you can do that. Plus, you also need to know that you cannot do that b'kelim. Mechaber is quoting here the Tashbetz, that kelim, vessels, cannot be used. But b'kelim, it's possible to do that. So we need to know this. Yes, you can raise the level of the water in such a manner, as long as you don't divide the mikveh into two, and as long as you don't use kelim. Now, what would you guess is the problem with kelim? Supposedly, what's the difference? The mikveh is a good mikveh. Kelim, what do we recall from kelim? Well, she'uvim here is not the problem, because kelim is associated with mayim she'uvim. Kelim is also associated with dvorim ha-mekablim tuma, things that are mekabel tuma, and we do know about an important concept called haviyosoy should be betahara. The haviyosa, the formation of the mikveh needs to be betahara, not through kelim tmeim. So here, as a result of using kelim to make this a kosher mikveh, to make this a good mikveh, it's in some ways haviyosa alidei tuma.
But you're putting, assuming that you don't have, there's nothing wrong with the kelim.
Right.
You're not making the mikveh out of kelim. The mikveh is still made b'tahara.
Right, exactly, yeah.
You're only putting them down on one end to fill up some space.
Right.
Or to turn them upside down so you have air
Right.
or whatever, to force the water the other way.
Right.
Why
Exactly.
would we be concerned about Tum and Tahara?
I thought about this as well. And I saw that the Shach has a little bit of elaboration on this, and he says, I don't think that's the reason. That the problem is with Kalim as a result of their Mekabel Tuma. Says the reason more likely is, if there's any Isra, because the Mechaber Paskins it's possible, that it's because if you use Kalim, there's usually not a hole or an opening between them that is Keshvoiferes Anoid. You do want, after all, the waters from the two sides to mix. They do mix if it's stones and if it's pieces of wood, where the openings between them is Keshvoiferes Anoid, if not more. With Kalim, he says more likely the explanation of why it's no good, of why it's possible, is because there's no Shvoiferes Anoid. That's what he says. And that's how he leaves it. He leaves it at that. He doesn't even attempt to say that no, there could be other issues. No, that's the only issue he can think of. But that could make sense. But the tumor, you're right. Says that doesn't fit in with what we know.
Arrange it so that you don't have that problem either.
Yes, exactly. Okay, but at least we have another explanation of why kalim can be a problem. You know, if you just put them in, maybe you won't have the waters go through. Not as much, you know,
And
not
because
big enough
of this-
opening.
And because of this possibility, we're banning it in all cases.
Right. The kalim possible.
Okay.
That's all. He's quoting this from the Tashbitz. He brings down the opinion of the Tashbitz about that. Ramos says, even if she could somehow bend down and cover with herself with water, if the water does not have the minimal depth of reaching her belly button and a little bit higher, a zeret, then lo titvol bo lechatchila, she should not immerse in it lechatchila. Why? Because if it's low, we're concerned that she may not do a good vila. Mihu im ein mikveh acheres, if there's no other mikveh in the neighborhood, ve'i efshar letak, and you can't fix this somehow, then afilo tzricho lishtateach al paneha, even if she has to completely bend down all the way on her face, machmas she'ena mayim amukim, because the waters are not deep enough. As long as we know, im mitkase gufa b'derech zeif, her entire body, somebody has to check, her entire body will be covered in this way, b'pam achas, at once, toveles sham, she can. So the Ramos makes it easy. Says, lechatchila, don't use that kind of a mikveh. If it doesn't have the minimal depth where she can easily bend and cover herself entirely. But if there's no other fix, no other mikveh, then you can use it. But she would have to have somebody making sure that the whole body was covered.
This is more likely to occur.
This can more than likely occur.
In a
Yes.
quote unquote natural mikveh, rather than a man-made one, because man is not going to make one that's.
What do you mean by man-made?
The mikvahs that we normally use now is a man-made.
Right, sure.
Build one.
Right.
You're going to build one that's going to be deep enough.
Hopefully, yeah.
No, I would assume that.
Right.
This
But
is
remember, at any,
like a mining or something where you don't have.
they may have built a big mikveh, but it may not be deep enough for whatever reason. In other words, it contains the right amount of water, but it just, what you're saying is, lechatchila, they should make it deep enough.
Right,
but for some reason,
I can't imagine why they would make one that's not deep enough.
maybe.
Once they're digging.
It depends. Oh, once they're digging, yeah, obviously. But it could be that this was a fast solution to a problem. In other words, they needed to make something, fashioned out something. And in rock, it's very difficult to go deep. Mm-hmm. And this, another explanation, as we will soon see, is that there are times that you encounter natural mikvois or ponds.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so that's where this situation can arise more often. All right. That takes care of the mikveh that is elongated. In other words, it contains the right amount, but it's just the shape is different. And this could be a little bit in the way of her having a good tevilah, but it's a kosher mikveh. The problems begin when we don't know if it's 100% kosher mikveh. As we said before, there can be all kinds of sfekas. Now, if there's a suffix if she immersed completely or not, well, just go in again. That's what a mikveh lady is for. If there's any suffix whatsoever. Wait a minute, I didn't notice what you have in your hair, or I didn't see this on your nails. She didn't go home yet. She has to go back inside. We don't want to be any suffix, whether the tefillah was kosher or not. So if it could be repeated, it should be repeated. Sometimes we don't make her go back. It depends what the suffix is. Here, the suffix is a serious suffix because it relates to the mikveh, not her. We've seen sfekas about her. We've seen situations where there can be a problem. But here, it's about the mikveh itself. So Seif Samach Zayin says as follows. Sofek Maim She'uvim. Tor. We don't know. It could be that some of this water in the mikveh is she'uvim. No. Well, what's the problem with that? Some? What does that remind you of? It can only remind us of gimulugim. Gimulugim under 40 sa'ah could be a problem, right? Above 40 sa'ah, we don't care how much maim she'uvim you put in. Before you reach the level of 40 sa'ah, gimulugim at once can be a problem. So there's a suffix here, legabe maim shuvim. It could be that there was maim shuvim poured in, spilled in. If there's a suffix about that, it's Torah. And that's the halacha. Suffix regarding maim shuvim is Torah. Now there's certain conditions about that. So the Mechaber gives an example. Ketzah, mikveh shenistapek. If you have a mikveh where your doubt is im noflu lo maim shuvim alo, your first doubt is, did some maim shuvim fall in or not? Noflu maim shuvim or lo noflu. V'afilo yoda bevadai shenoflu. He knows that maim shuvim fell in, but he's not sure how much. Sofek yesh maim gimulugim. Sofek eimah. He's not sure if it was gimulugim or not. Some of it fell, so you know it fell, but you're not sure about the amount. So we don't know if there was gimulugim sofek ein bohem. V'afilo yoda bevadai sheyesh bohem gimulugim. There's a third possibility. You know for sure it was gimulugim. But you know what? It's very possible that when they fell in, Sofik Shahoya b'mikveh shenoflu b'mem se'o Sofik lohoya. At the time they fell in, and it was gimulugin, it could be the mikveh was kosher. It already had 40 se'o. So you see the various sfekas here? Regardless, any one of these three kinds of sfekas, harei kosher. Why? The din of Sofik Maim Shuvim is a din of Sofik Derabanan lekulo. The Rambam says you should not, of course, immerse yourself lechatchila in such a situation, but b'di'evet it's kosher. Chazon Ish brings down, and it's mashma like that from the Mechaber, the lechora lechatchila should also be kosher. It's a Sofik Derabanan. Obviously, if you know the situation before, you can fix it somehow. Obviously, if there's gimulugim before it's mem se'o, you can't easily fix it. But if there's any kind of suffix that you can fix before, then obviously you should fix it. You shouldn't run into a situation where you're going to have a suffix. Here we're talking about maim she'uvim that can pose a problem, especially if you have less than 40 se'o. So I know maim she'uvim fell. I'm not sure if it's gimulugim. I'm not even sure if it was maim she'uvim that fell. Maybe it was not maim she'uvim. So there's some suffix concerning this potential problem of called maim shuvim. So it's a suffix derabanan. The Shach and Taz say that we're talking about, to make it workable with the many shitas, the Shach and Taz both hold that we're talking about in a mikveh sherubai kosher. The majority of the water is kosher. Otherwise, they say it would be a suffix deraisa, because we hold kuloi shov is deraisa. So once you have a mikveh that's a rubai kosher, then you could say on the rest, Safik Derabanan Lekula. So that's an important detail that they add. Depending how you hold, and this is a machlokes, but based on what we see from the Mechaber, any one of these kind of situations constitutes a Safik Derabanan. So the Shach and Taz say, well, that's in this situation where, at the very least, Ruba is kosher. Gimulugin can still be a problem, but we don't know. Oh, we don't know, but Ruba is kosher, then that's a Safik Derabanan Lekula. Sif Samaches. Beis Mikvois. Echod yesh bo mem se'o. Ve'echod ein bo. So you have two mikvois. next to each other. One has 40 sel, one does not. Now you have a situation of naflu gimu lugim maim shuvim le'echad mehem. Now you may remind yourself, as you're reading this seifim, oh, this sounds typical to some halachas in Yore Deah, in Taaruvot, or Basar. You'll see why. Imagine you have two pots. Remember that? It fell into one of them. Right? So these are similar kinds of situations, all taken from the Mishnayos, by the way, mikvois. Most of them are. Most of the cases. Beis mikvois echad yesh bo memso. So you have two mikvahs next to each other. One has 40 so. One does not have 40 so. Naflu gimel lugim mayim shuvim le'echad mehem. 3 lugin of mayim shuvim fell into one of them. Well, if it fell into the one that's kosher, I don't mind. But it could have fallen to the one that was not kosher yet. But I don't know where they fell. Sveika tohar. In this instance, this example, the suffix is also tohar. Why? Here we see the word yitle, which we know from Niddah too. We know from Taaruvot too. To be tohar means, you know what? We make an assumption. Remember we made an assumption about stains, very small stains. They could be from kinim, lice. That's called to be toile. Where did this stain come from? It's important. If it has the coloration and it's not on a davar eno mekabel tuma, right? It's on her underwear. It could be a problem. She's in her shivas nekim now. You don't want to start all over. Where did it all come? Where did this thing come from? Well, it could have come from something that she wore while she was a Niddah. And this, or it could be she never took it to the laundry. Oh, you mean it could have been dirty and she didn't check it? No, that's called being toile. If you could be toile, on ksamim you can be toile. It wasn't a real re'iyah that she actually felt, that she actually saw her period coming in, which is a whole different idea. And it's not either something that she stuck inside where we know where it's coming from. This is just a stain. Or with stain, we're lenient. We're lenient because we can, at times, be toilet on something. Obviously, if it's very big, right, bigger than the grease and so forth, mashu, then it could be a problem depending where you found it, depending on the color. Well, if it's a part of the body where it could be a bruise, it's not from there, it could not have come from oiso makam, then obviously, no problem. But if there's ever a chance it could have come there because it's on her bed, linen under the sheets or whatever, and yeah, it's big, it could be an issue. But when you can be toilet, you're toilet with ksamim. So here, this is a different kind of toilet. Here we make an assumption. You know what? Statistically, if you want to use the word statistically, or chances are that it's more likely it fell into this mikveh and not into this mikveh. That's going to be the toilet over here.
We had a similar problem before.
Right.
When we had 3 mikvahs.
That's correct. We had similar situations.
Right? And it depended which one and on which side where the shuvim fell.
Yes.
Right? Why doesn't this fit into that category over there?
It could. There are various examples scattered here. Yeah. It's just that here we have a whole bunch of scenarios.
Because presumably you see where the shuvim came from, which side it would have.
Right. Here we have more of a situation of we may not have the required amount. So we have various examples that fit these scenarios that are being planted. But you're right, there are others that we may have seen that are similar. So here we're going to have a situation of toilim. 2 mikvois, one has 40 sel, one does not have 40 sel. We know 3 lugin fell in of mayim shuvim, but we don't know to which one. The suffix is talking to sheyesh lo b'mei yitle. You can say the following. You can assume that, you know what? It could have easily fallen into the one that has 40 sel. Hoyu shneim pchusim imem sel. But let's say both of them are less than 40 sel. V'noflu, the gimel fell into le'echad mehem, ve'en yadua le'eze mehem, and you don't know to which one. Well, kol echad b'shneim pasul. Each one is going to be pasul. Why? Why in this case will they both be pasul? She'ein lo b'mei yitle. you no longer have one that you can make that toilet, that assumption. In other words, why would you passel one more than the other? Make one more, you don't have that kind of a situation. Therefore, both of them are possible. You cannot be toilet more on one than the other. There's no advantage or disadvantage of one more than the other.
This assumes at least 3 more.
Yeah, that you know that it fell in, right? So, if you have one that is a full, you can be toilet on that. If not, it won't work. The Shach on this one also says, when you don't know to which one they fell, but one of them did contain the 40 cell. We're talking about that you had roiv mayim ksherim still in the mikveh. Dim lo king, we hold, he says, according to us, the kaimel and kula shov also in the raisa. He goes with the shita that says kula shov doraisa. So therefore, we're talking about that the roiv is mayim ksherim. And by the way, he adds bedoraisa also. We don't say lo amrinon sha'ani oimer. You don't say, oh, we could be toilet. It fell in there. It's a doraisa. You don't use that explanation. You don't attribute to one more than the other if it's in a doraisa situation. This is only in the Rabbanan that you can say that. So therefore, the Shach has to remind us that we're talking about that the roiv in the mikveh is mayim ksherim. Sif Samach Tes. Mikveh sheinicho reikon. Let's say you left the mikveh empty. You come by one day and you find that it's full. Kosher. It's a kosher mikveh. Why? There's a suffix mayim she'uvim mikveh. There's a suffix of mayim she'uvim here. That suffix is the Rabbanan. But wait a minute, we're missing something here. Suffix, just because it's a suffix, I mean, the whole thing is full. It was empty before. And the Mechaber says it's just a suffix mayim she'uvim. Apparently, you could hold with the shita that it's always a suffix mayim she'uvim. And not everybody goes along with that. The Tas says right away, don't think that it's only a suffix she'uvim which makes such a situation kosher. There's something else here. What is that something else? The Tas says, Bidush suffix derabanan, ve'oid nichlal bozeh, what's included here besides the suffix derabanan is sheyesh lo cheskos kashrus tchila. There's a chazak of kashrus here. In order to understand cheskos kashrus, we need to go back to the words of the Ramah earlier. What did the Ramah tell us earlier? If you recall, in Sif Dalet it was, over there we saw that the Ramah says that if roiv de guma, if the majority of the water is behechshe, then it's a suffix derabanan. So he added those words there, which is what we're seeing over here. When dealing with sfeikas, we need to have that the roiv of the pit contained kosher waters. But if you don't know that, then it's a sfeika d'oraisa. Or if you're dealing with a situation that, you know what, it's very possible that the goy filled it up. You remember that? If there is a chance that a goy filled it up, it's possible. You don't believe him. However, if you do see, you can somehow tell that it was filled up for tevila purposes, not to rinse out, not for any other reason. If you somehow do know or somehow figure out that it is filled for the purposes of tevila, you can assume it's kosher because roiv ha'oiskin etzel mikveh beki'in. We have a rule that the majority of people who are responsible, involved in maintaining the kashrus of the mikveh are beki'in in the halachas. They're not just going to open up a faucet and fill it up with plain water. So now that you see it full, you have to assume that it was done in the proper way. That assumption of being done in the proper way, because people who are involved in the maintaining of the mikveh usually know what they're doing, that's the chazakah. So we have a chazakah that the majority of mikvahs that we find are going to be done properly. Oh, once you make that kind of a chazakah, once you make that kind of an assumption, and you have here a suffix derabanan, Now we can understand how it is possible that if you left it empty and you found it full, that it's kosher. But as we said in Siv Dalet, if there's any chance that Goy did it, there would be a problem. So if you eliminate that, and it appears from what you know that this is done for purposes of tefillah, well, purposes of tefillah, then those who took care of it are probably Bekian and did it right. And that's what allows this kind of a situation to be kosher. That the Mechaber just makes it simple. Safek ma'im she'uvim. No, but everybody else explains it's not just a safek in this kind of a case, a plain safek. Yeah, we have to have roiv. Here there's a big safek that got the whole water. This is a safek from scratch.
Is this a roiv on this mikveh most of the time is done properly?
Mikvois. Not on this one. Not on this. Across the board where you find mikvois. Yeah, they have. So that's what the Taz is saying. There's a certain chazaka. You have to have a certain chazaka. We're depending on this chazaka too, not just on safek ma'im she'uvim here. That wouldn't work. Just that by itself. It was completely empty. And in Sif Dalet, we actually saw the possibility that a goy could have been involved in that, if you recall. Mikveh shehi shaloi v'kochon belongs to the goy, or that he's paid for it. You can't just trust him, unless there was elam ken yesh b'mikveh chof aleph sa'ah to begin with, which makes the situation a lot easier, right? And that's where you have the Ramah. Explain the Ma'acha, the Rubai kosher, since the majority is kosher. In that case, it's Feika Lekula. But if Yesh Lochush, if there's any concern that the Oikochim filled it up, to wash in it or something, Psula.
But you have mikvahs.
Yes. Right.
In shuls across America where the caretaker is responsible. And he's the guy flipping the switch or emptying, to empty and to fill it with the right water.
Well, hopefully he knows what he's doing, yeah.
No. But how can you, based on what you just said,
right?
How can you rely?
You can't just hire anybody.
No. But
right.
Even if you hire, and he's been doing it for 100 years, because you cannot rely upon the guy, what's the basis for relying upon him under those circumstances?
You can't. So depending what his responsibilities are. Here he just brings that, if it's a possibility that the goy did it, it's possible. Im lav, if not, the Ramah says the vada is so. If it's more likely that the Jew did it for tvila purposes, it couldn't do it. He didn't do it for other reasons, just for the fun, for bathing. Then we have a cloud. I
knew a city
right.
where the custodian of the shul, it was his job.
To do what?
To fill. He had to flip a switch.
Right.
And that filled it. And he flipped another switch in the morning to empty it so they would have, when the water would get dirty.
Yeah, but that
was his job.
Yeah, but that was involving waters that are not his. He's not bringing in those waters. Was his job amount to just flipping a switch? Where's the water coming from? It's kosher water.
Okay, that was
so here that there's no concern. We're talking about nemonas, which is another concept.
That was my question.
Nemonas would be a suffix, would be a problem when there's a real suffix. Where did the water come from? Here we know where the water is coming from. He's just flipping the switch. It's not a problem like it is on Shabbos, that you can't benefit, It's just a problem,
But what you said before, you can't trust the guy on the nemonas.
Where there's a suffix, where there can be a suffix.
Okay.
Would there be a suffix? No, hopefully not, because over there the water table, right? It had to do with the water.
Water table. Had to deal with, right?
How the water came into the mikveh. I'm sure it was done. Whoever built it did it properly, designed it right. He was just the switch.
It was just a switch.
That's fine. Yeah. All right. Next, Sif Ayin. Here we have a different kind of a suffix. We have a tzinor shemekalech la mikveh. We have a pipe that's leading directly, allowing the water to flow directly into the mikveh. And it's of course a kind of pipe that is okay. But you also have a machteshes and a tuno betzidoy. You have what's called a mortar. Now mortar in English has various meanings. It means the cement or grout that's used between bricks, Mortar could be in the military. And there's also a mortar that was used in the olden days to grind into it. It was like a vessel. It's called a mortar.
Right.
Okay?
Pharmacists used to use, yes.
Yeah, that you grind into it, and that would be the container. That's what we're talking about here when we say machteshes. So that's basically a kli. That's the idea behind this halacha. That we have a tzinor, but you also have a kli next to it. And there's a suffix. Tzinor shemekalech lemikveh v'machteshes netuno b'tzhido, the machteshes is right next to it. You know what? And it poses a problem because we now have a doubt that suffix met tzinor lemikveh, suffix met machteshes mikveh. We don't know how the waters ended up in the mikveh. Did they flow through the tzinor or through the machteshes? Through the machteshes, it would be a problem. It's a keli. Is it possible? Here you can't say suffix. Why not? Because here, the psul is there. The psul is clearly there.
But wait, you just said you don't know which one it flowed over.
Right.
You don't know whether it flowed over the machteshes.
Right. Here, you can say, you know what, let's put the mikveh becheskas kashrus. Like in the previous seif, where it was first empty. You know what, it was empty, now it's full. Well, probably it was done right. Here, you can't say that. Probably, you have the machteshes right next to it. It could have been just as much through the machteshes. You don't have a real doubt, like you have before. Here he says, Haposul moichiach, the psul is there. If there really was a chance 50-50 that it went through the machteshes, the psul is moichiach. It is indicating that it could have easily traveled through it. Therefore, v'im yesh b'mikveh ruboy mayim kshedim, arei ze kosher. But once again, if you still have in the mikveh roiv mayim kshedim, it's a kosher, because at that point you will go back to what we said before, shezeh suffik mayim she'uvim. Why? Sharei yesh shal mikveh kosher kavua, because the mikveh kosher kavua is there already. In other words, the basis for it, the roiv is there. Roiv is there, so, but we have a suffik legabe the rest of it. Well, legabe the rest of it is suffik mayim she'uvim, but you have the roiv. Because Minatorah, the Taz says, Eino posul elo bekulu shov. Aval beroiv shov kosher v'dirabanan posul. V'afilu b'shloisha lugin, and even in 3 lugin.
Well, who cares when
Lo yechmiru b'sveika. What?
if the roiv of the mikveh is kosher?
Right.
Okay. Are we saying the mikveh had 40 saw of kosher already in it? Or less than 40?
No less. You have just a roiv.
Just a roiv. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why the Mechaber adds, this would save the day. Because once you have the roiv mayim shem, you go back to the original suffix. Well, even if it did go through, what already would be the problem? It's the roiv of the roiv is okay. Legabe the rest, it's a suffix mayim shuvim then that's the rabbanan, and that's suffix rabbanan lekula. But if you don't have that, then you can't say that it's a real suffix like before, because a psul mochiach, you really have the psul there, that he could potentially have caused the waters to go through it and become pasul. Then you can't just say that you have a simple suffix. All right, next seif, Ayin Aleph. Yeah.
The mikveh has less than 40. It's going over both the regular, the kosher pipe, and the machteshes.
Yeah.
Even if we say roiv, right?
Right.
If it's going over the machteshes is at least 3 lugim,
Right.
it should invalidate
Yes, that's
the
correct.
whole mikveh.
That's correct.
So then why are we saying here, suffix she'uvim l'kula?
Because as long as you have roiv mayim sherem, the suffix that remains is a suffix rabbanan. That's the key to remember here. Once you have a suffix rabbanan, it's lekula.
But if I had 3 lugim of she'uvim fall into less than 40.
For sure, 3 lugin, then it's a problem. It's no good.
Right.
Here we're talking about sfeikis only.
So we don't know whether...
We don't know for sure if it's gimel lugim she'uvim that fell in, because they could have flowed in through the tzinor. So in this kind of situation where you really have a legitimate suffix, fine. But when you don't have a legitimate suffix, as Mechaber says, when the psul is moichiach, the only way you could be saved is if you had roiv mayim sherim at least. But if you don't have roiv mayim sherim, then you don't have a chazakah here, a cheskes kashrus anymore. You know what? It went. Why say it went through here? It could have gone through here. You can't be toilet. There's nothing that you can work with. So it's not a suffix derabanan. You don't really have a suffix that there's a better chance. For some reason, there's no better chance. You could just as much as gone through the machdeshes. It's not like when you left it empty. Left it empty, we know we have a chazakah that most mikvahs are kosher. The ones that take care of them know what they're doing. Unless, like we saw in Sif Dalet, a goy is involved. Well, it's a problem of the manas. Otherwise, the cheskas of kosher, and it's a suffix d'Rabbanan too. Then together, the Taz says, when you have both, that it's a suffix plus it's a cheskes kashrus, it works well. But here you don't have a cheskes kashrus because a psul moichiach, you have a suffix, yeah, but it's not a good enough suffix. The psul is there and it's just as strong as the other one. Okay, Seif Ein Aleph, Tome sheyorad litvol. A Tome individual went immersed into the mikveh. Sofek tovel, sofek lo tovel. We have a doubt whether his tvila was good or not. Or afilu toval, we do know he went in, but sofek yesh bar boim so sofek ein bo. We're not sure if in that mikveh there was 40 or not. Or next example, shnei mikvois. One of them echad yesh bar boim so. One of the mikveh had 40, the other did not. And we know that he went into one of them, and we don't know which one. Tova be'echad be'en yodu be'ezim. In all these situations, he's Tomeh. Why? Because here, we say, Lefishat Tomeh becheskosoi. He remains in his status, his original status. Ad sheyivoda shetova koroya, until we know that his tefillah was done properly. Now we need to explain this a little bit more, but let's finish up this eve. But you see the three situations where he's Tomeh, and we say you continue to be Tomeh until we are certain that your tefillah was done properly. So far, what could you guess? There's a difference between the individual having a suffix in himself, if his actions were done right, versus if the place is good, if the mikveh is a kosher mikveh or not. There somehow appears to be a little bit of a difference. All right. V'chein mikveh. Shenimdad v'nimtzachose, we measured the mikveh and it was found to be missing. Ben shehoyo mikveh b'reshus harabim, ben shehoyo b'reshus hayachid, whether the mikveh was in reshus harabim, whether it was in reshus hayachid. Kol hataharos shenasu al gabav, all the taharas that were done afterwards because of the immersion there. Lemafreya, they are tmeas. In other words, lemafreya, how do we say lemafreya in English? Retroactively, they're tmeas achi yivoda zman, until we know the time shenimdad bo v'hoya shalom, until we can figure out, well, this one was done last week and last week it was kosher, then those taharas will be okay. Okay, so what is going on here? Now here, obviously this halacha seems to be talking more about the times of the Beis HaMikdash, the time of Tumah and Tara, because it's talking about taharas here. What comes out of this halacha, however, is that we're maimid the tomeh b'cheskosoi. In other words, he remains in his original status. His status cannot be changed because of a suffix, because his actions may not have been complete. So the Taz explains that we don't say suffix deraisa lechumra here in this particular situation. You could say, why don't you just say suffix deraisa lechumra? What do you have? Why are we saying it? The problem here is that his status remains the way it is. So the Taz wants to say that this halacha of being maimed the person on cheskosoi, or the taharas on cheskosoi, applies even to situations of tumah derabanan. That's the Taz's chiddush over here. Like there are some who hold like that, but the Magid Mishneh, and I think the Gra here also over here, Pesach Tshuva also talks about this, is that we're not talking about also the Rabbanan. We're only talking about Tomeh here of the Oraisa. Why? Because by the Rabbanah there would be a chiluk. This is only a Tuma D'Oraisa situation. In a D'Rabbanan you would have the following chiluk. If there's a suffix, if the pe'ula to be metaher, like Tevila, was done right, that is where we're machmir. Or if we're mesupik legabe the shear of the water, if they were there or not, and that's lekula. So midoraisa, we have of course a problem. If a person does not know if his Tevila was okay or not. However, when it comes to a D'Rabbanan, the chiluk is a little bit different. In other words, you need to consider the pe'ula, obviously, but you also can have a suffix, not regarding the pe'ula, you can have a suffix legabe the water, like as we've seen before. So it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about the suffix, whether the pe'ula of the tefillah was done right, we're going to be machmer, as I began to explain, because it wasn't done right. Maybe you didn't do it, so there's a chazaka. You stay what you are, what you were. But if everything was done right, but we have a suffix legabe the water, that's when we can apply suffix d'Rabbanan lekula. You know what? He did everything right. Maybe it was okay, maybe not. But the roiv was kosher, as we've seen all along. It all depending what the circumstances are. But if we have a doubt whether the whole pe'ula, the action, was done right, maybe you didn't do anything. Maybe you didn't immerse. You were dreaming you did. Right? We don't know for sure you did, because it doesn't count. Maybe you went into a bathhouse, not a mikveh. You went somewhere, but I went there, but that's not a mikveh. Oh, you know what? I could have gone there, and that was a mikveh. Depending if you went right or you went left. Maybe he didn't go into he went into the waters. We don't know if he did the right thing. We don't know if he completed the job. That we need to be machmir, because we put the individual on his chazaka. And we saw this concept of chazaka. This is not the chazaka that we're talking about before, about cheskes kashrut. Here we're talking about status. Cheskasai, what was his status before? Well, before, up until the mikveh, he was tameh. Well, he continues to be tameh until we are certain he did it right. So that would be the chiluk between the pe'ula, the action taken, versus if the problem is in the water, the suffix is in the water. So the mechaber situation is clearly, can be talking about it d'oraisa. And here, what's interesting, when he says about whether it was in Reshus Rabbim or Reshus Yachid, that also follows with the questions and sveikas that they had in the past about a suffix in Reshus Rabbim is different than if it's a suffix in Reshus Yachid. In Reshus Rabbim we're going to be more lenient than we're going to be in Reshus Yachid, indoors. This is all that, halachas that are covered in the Mishnah as to differences that apply to different locations, sveikas, if something is the rice or if it's the Rabbanon. Usually we say suffix Reshus Rabbim is not a problem. If it's a real suffix, it's tahor. But not here. Here we say what? Ha'amid tomei al cheskasoi. Just leave the tomei on his original status until we determine that he did it right. Sif Ayin Beis. Beis mikvois. You have two mikvois. She'ein bohem arboim saw. Neither of them have 40 saw. V'naflu shloisha lugim letoich echad mehem, and 3 lugim fell into one of them. V'yadu aleize mehem naflu. We know where they fell. All right. What happened, however, next is v'achakach naflu shniim. Then a second set of 3 lugim fell in. Ve'en yadu aleize mehem naflu. And here we don't know. Wait a minute. Did the second set of 3 lugim fall into the same old mikveh that had the first 3 lugim fall into it? Or did this second set of 3 lugim fall into the second one? Now they're both pasul. Areni yochol litlois. Once again, we come across litlois. I can be toiler, Veloimar lemokom shenoflu rishonim noflu shnim. Wherever the first 3 fell in, that same mikveh got the second set of 3. So the second mikveh is not affected. Okay, so again, we're being toiler. The trouble waters, the Gimel Lugim, fell into the same location twice. If we don't know where the first 3 fell in. Ubeshnim, and I do know the second time, the second set, Niddah le'ezem naflu. Here we don't say, Ein yochel litas loimar. You know what? The mokar shenoflu shnim, noflu rishon. Wherever the second set fell, that's where the original first also fell. Okay? That we don't do. You can only be toilet if the first set you know. Not the other way around. I know the second set, but I don't know where the first one is. Well, no. Let's assume where the second set fell. The first one's originally 3 lugin also fell. No, that we don't say. That kind of a heter, of a tliya we don't say. It doesn't work that way.
Logically, it doesn't seem to be much difference.
Doesn't appear to be, but the way tliya works is that it fell here, then I'm assuming the second set also fell. I can say it because I know. If I don't know, then I've already said I don't know. The second one, it just happened to be the second one went there. Oh, no, retroactively you can't say that. It's like you've already made a decision. Echad yesh bo arboim so ve'echad ein bo. The first one has 40 so and one does not. Of the 3 lugin that fell in. Areini oimer letoch shel arboim noflu. I will say that they fell into the one that has 40 se'ah. Right? So I don't know where they fell. But it happens to be that one of them has 40 se'ah. I'm going to say that they fell into the one that has 40 se'ah. Echad shov ve'echad eino shov. One is shov and one is not shov. Hareini omer letoch shel shov noflu. They went into the ones that are shov. And same thing with any kinds of psul. The Chachamim said you're allowed to be toile that it fell in the psul, in the one that's already a problem. Okay. Shnei mikvois siv ein gimel. She'ein bohem arboim so. That you don't have 40 so. V'noflu shloisha lugin letoich echad mehem. So you have 2 mikvois that neither of them has 40 so, similar to what we saw before. And 3 lugin fell into one of them. And again, ein yodua le'ezem hem noflu. You also still don't know where they fell, to each one. But here what happened was, achakach yordug shomim, rain came and fell in and filled up the mikvois. V'nismalu, lo yitbol b'shum echad mehem. You should still not be toivel in neither one of them, lechatchilo, but only lechatchila. B'di'eved, if you did, as the Shach says, but b'di'eved also lo tvila. Why? Because kivan sheyordu acharkach geshamim, since the rain already fell in and filled it up, now we go back to an original suffix, which is okay. That says, you know what? All right, they're both okay. So this is, but
retroactively fixing the mikveh.
Yeah, but not lechatchila. Mechaber says you can't really retroactively fix it.
Yeah.
Right? No, he says you shouldn't, because you don't know which one it fell in. They were both missing 40 saw. Either one could be possible. Now the rain came in, it's full. Oh, okay, it's full, but maybe it's okay. Now, at least one of them is okay. Yeah. But the evidence, if you went in, it could be you went into the right one. See what I mean? But lechatchila, you don't fix it retroactively. Yeah. Now there's an interesting dogel meravav here on the side that says, what would be the case if the rain fell and only one mikveh filled up, not both? Would the halacha be any different? B'di'evet. He says, sorry here, and I'm not sure. So because the mechaber situation is clearly where they both filled up, just we're not sure originally where they fell. Well, that's why he says lechatchila, you shouldn't use it. Yeah. Anyway, in all this din of toiling, the Shach has explained that the whole heter here is when we're talking about a psul derabanan. When you say toiling, not when there is a doraisa. As we said before, in a doraisa we're not toilah. Seif ein dalet kol mikvois hanimtsois psulim shecheskosum sheuvim. Let's say you find a mikveh somewhere. It's psulim. The cheskosum, they are sheuvim. Well, why is this any different from before? Before we talk about cheskes mikvois ksheres. one who does it usually does it, builds it for it to be kosher. So we assumed it was built to be kosher for tevilah. Then also now it was probably done right. Here we don't know. We just come across some mikveh. We don't know. So kol mikvois hanimtso is you just find a mikveh of water. Psulim shecheskosun, they are she'uvim. So the Shach says, wait a minute. It all depends on what exactly you find. Shach explains, Niddah dehoda posul hocho hainu b'shenida shenosu al yidei adam. You can see it was made by a man for some jacuzzi or something, maybe. He made it. So that's why we say it's puzzle. We don't know what it's for. There's no chazaka here. So on the contrary, we say cheskosun that it's maim she'uvim altogether. He filled it up for his kids. But what happens if you go to the desert, and you see a pool of water gathered in some hole that has the right dimensions and right amount, like ditches in the field, that were filled through rainwater. Because here we assume, you know what, this was rainwater that just accumulated in this ditch. If it can be determined that this is a ditch bidei shamayim. But just to see a little area in some place where it appears that it was man-made, and this is not a Jewish community or anything that has any cheskes kashas, of course, and the Mechaber says those kinds of mikvois are becheskes that they have maim she'uvim entirely, and therefore they're puzzle. You would have to empty it out and fill it up again. And the last seif, there are those who do not allow to pour hot water into a mikveh to warm it up because of gzeras mechatzois. They were concerned that people may go into bathhouses instead of the mikveh and think it's okay. They saw somebody pouring hot water with a pot. Or to fill it up entirely with hot water, and then and then to connect it through to a river with shorferes anoid. Yesh mekirin, some are lenient to do all of this. Matirin lehatil chom in the mikveh, they allow us to warm up a mikveh in all kinds of ways either by pouring the hot water into it, or in other ways through electrical ovens or something. And we're not so concerned. The Ramah says, however, mikol mokom yesh lehachmir. You should be machmir im lo b'mokom shenohagu lahok, unless it's a place where the custom is to be lenient. As ein limchos biyodin. However, if we were talking about chamei tveria, mutor lekule alma, nobody's going to confuse chamei tveria, the mineral waters of chamei tveria, which are hot naturally, to merchatzoyis. So the gzera does not apply to chamei tveria. But le'achar tvila b'mei mikveh if afterwards, after the woman went into the main mikveh, which is kosher, she wants now to go to take a shower for some reason, muteres, according to the Ramah, muteres likonas lemerchatz kedei shetechamim atzma, she's allowed to, here his example is to go into a merchatz, a bathhouse, to warm up a little bit, but not to actually take a shower. To take a bath or a shower, she shouldn't. It appears that she is saying, this is what's making me clean, the shower and my bath, not the original mikveh. But yesh oisrim, to do that, and some are matir. V'chein nohagu. The Ramah says that that's the custom, even with men. Going to the mikveh, you don't go to the shower right after that. You go first to the shower, and then you go into the mikveh. But that's for a different reason, not to show that you give more chashivas to the shower. But here, the last series really has to do with hot water. And hot water, the Aruch HaShulchan and others say very clearly that they were not so makpid with hot water, even though originally there was a gzeras merchatzois. Why aren't we makpid today? Because today everybody knows that mikvois are warmed up. So you don't have that gzera anymore that used to apply when they originally had to warm it up by pouring hot water into it. So today you want to warm it up in any way you can, it's fine. Obviously you're usually not going to need to pour hot water into. You're probably going to have some heater that you're going to buy. Yeah. So heating up the waters, or Chashulchan says in others, Yore Deah, the generation is weaker, and for that reason we even allow them to go into a mikveh on Shabbos that's somewhat warm. It's a big Shilin Halawa. if you can go into hot water on Shabbos. Some say with Vila they were lenient, because Vila is not like merchatzois. We're not concerned that they may come to heat up the water. Rav Moshe has a tshuva on that she shouldn't go in on Shabbos mamash, she should go in a little bit before. I think he says the best thing is for mikveh to be a little warm and not very hot. I think the Mishnah Berurah talks about that. Otherwise, there's a lot of shittas that hold that it's not right to immerse yourself in hot water on Shabbos. Now, obviously, we don't take baths on Shabbos. That's one of the reasons we don't take baths on Shabbos. You may come to turn on the hot water. But here it's a Tvilas mitzvah. Tvilas mitzvah maybe is a little bit different. So here, there's a little bit of a question about that. In those days, it was partially to do with the Gzeira. Then there was a second issue that the Ramah talks about taking a shower after the fact. Even that, today we're not so makpid. If she's very sensitive, she wants to take a bath after the mikveh, for whatever reason, we let her. Even though the halachas back then were a little bit different because of the concern of the gzera of merchatzois. Today, that doesn't really apply so much, and therefore, for the most part, you can be lenient with having warmed up the water, obviously, before Shabbos. Okay, that takes care of Hilchos Mikvois, Mr. Hashem. And the next Siman Reish Beis is Dinei Dvorim HaChoytetzim B'Tvilas Kelim. It has to do also with Mikvois, but it's not human beings going into the mikveh, it's the kelim going in. The halachas of kelim, of Tvilas Kelim, is elsewhere in Yore Deah, but here we're talking about chatzitzes, which are important to keep in mind when you are immersing a keli that requires tefillah, that it should have no chatzitzah. So we'll cover that next time.